the working memory. And it is this part of the brain that gets really engaged if you do something. Whatever you learn through that stays with you forever. And this part of the brain is just hard to activate if you try to learn by watching videos or, doing quizzes. A lot of existing training materials used in corporations or anywhere are not really teaching anything because, the completion rate for like standard slideshow is so low that it's better to spend 5 minutes in VR rather than watching an hour-long video because you just turn yourself off and don't really remember anything.
Let's boldly go.
We are in the Bat Cave once again, and joining us here, we're excited to have with us Piotr Baczynski. Did I say that right, Peter?
You said it perfectly.
Said it perfectly. Okay, I'm not going to use your last name again, but Peter is the founder and CEO of something called Immersion Labs. He is an expert in VR. We're going to talk about something that a lot of people are excited about, the future of VR. I'm sure we'll talk about AR and lots of things.
Well, one of my mentors and role models, Peter Diamandis, the futurist, famously says, the best way to predict the future is to invent it yourself. And so today, rather than predicting the future, we're talking to one of the guys who's inventing the future of VR.
So Peter, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about Immersion Labs and how you got into this?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. This is my first podcast on American soil, so really excited. I always was excited by VR, the concept of VR. I played games all my life. My father is a programmer, so I grew up with technology, even though my background education is political science, so something completely different. And when I first saw the first prototype of the Oculus, the first VR headset, I immediately got hooked. I got the prototype, and I kept thinking,
where did you see it? How did the guy in Poland see the prototype of the Oculus?
We do have internet, Rick.
Okay, so it wasn't like physical.
No. I saw the Kickstarter campaign, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is actually like what we always wanted. And I got the prototype. And I was thinking about starting a company. I couldn't think, what could I do with that? And I was thinking, maybe we could, present real estate investments, buildings to people. And as I started doing that, I think like 2-3 weeks after, here's a crazy story. A guy comes to my party at my house. He's a friend of a friend, an American dude. First time have an American dude in my house in Poland. And he
Watch out for those guys.
And he walks in and he sees the prototype. And he's like, oh, that's an Oculus. I work there. I was like, what? And turns out he was actually one of the first employees at Oculus. And he said, no one is really trying to make any business around this yet. And that gave me a lot of courage to start. And that's how it started. And then
sometimes the universe speaks to you.
Yeah.
Gives you signs.
Yeah. But the next few years were much harder than I expected. But
now, did you have a job before doing this, or is this your first job?
So my first job, like a real job, was actually I worked at Olive Garden in South Carolina when I was like 20. I came here for the first time.
Wow.
And then when I came back to Poland, with my hard-earned $5,000, I started my first company, which is an interactive agency, and I ran it for a few years. I had some experience, but I was doing website for companies in Poland. So this new VR thing that I started about 2013 was completely new.
Wow, yeah, 2013. That's actually the year I saw Oculus. I went to Singularity University up in San Francisco, and they had a couple of the prototypes on hand.
Yeah.
And I got to see it. So yeah, that was super early.
I thought you were going to mention you read Ready Player One or like...
Yeah, I actually got a copy of Ready Player One from the Oculus founder, Palmer Luckey.
Yeah.
He was giving them away on the first event that they built.
Yeah, he makes, I read that he made, at the time, all the employees read Ready Player One.
Yeah, it's an incredible book. Yeah.
All right, so you start the company, you did this other company, and then with Immersion, like what was your vision when you first started out?
Well, so that was kind of funny because I wanted to basically immerse people in stuff. I always believed that it's so much better to explain things by doing them, by trying them. When you meet, let's say, a 12 years old kid who plays a game about tanks, right? He will know every single tank that is in that game. He will know every single detail about, every cannon, all the types of armor, hundreds of vehicles. And he never tried to learn for a second. He just played the game. So I wanted to use that principle. And it was about two things. One thing was VR. The other one was actually using gaming technology to explain products, to help companies sell stuff. And I was trying to do this using the first prototype of Oculus, which were quite horrible. They made you nauseous. Mm-hmm. And now that I think about it, the first demo that I did to all my clients was actually a roller coaster. So probably the worst thing you could do.
Yep.
And I was leaving my clients. I mean, they never became my clients. I was leaving the people I was demoing to terrified and sick in their conference room. And they were like, But we finally started getting some traction with this whole, real estate thing. But that was an interesting lesson to me, because I would go to a company. I met with a company that was building this huge skyscraper in Warsaw. And I showed them, I basically, my team built like a VR presentation of their building before they actually bought it. So I showed them that, and I put the headset on their heads, and they could see on the flat screen this 3D model, looking around in real time, all that stuff. And they said, we love it. We're going to buy it. So I was my first client. That was, I think, until recently, the tallest building in Europe. So we did that, and I come to the meeting to present them the final product. And they look at that, they're super happy, and they say, that's great, but we don't need this VR thing. And I was like, well, but you just ordered a VR project. They said, no, we like the fact that you can look around in real time on the flat screen. We don't really care about this whole goggle stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was crazy to me that, the technology wasn't that exciting, that part of technology. It just wasn't ready then.
Interesting. So it was doing the 3D renders, but then just presenting them on a TV.
And basically being able to look around in real time. That was new, using gaming technology in product presentation.
Such a brilliant insight that like young kids learn about tanks, or God forbid they play Grand Theft Auto, they learn all sorts of awful stuff, but they really do learn, and connecting that to adult learning is super cool.
Yeah, and I think by now we have plenty of research about the effectiveness of learning in VR versus sort of traditional classroom learning, which is, I don't think enough people know about it in terms of like how more effective you are in terms of whatever you're learning, high stakes skills, surgery, and VR versus, again, traditional classroom.
I seem to recall the study something like 4 times more effective. You learn 4 times more content, and the retention is way longer. Do you have any of the statistics that you're
fingertips? Absolutely. Basically, there is this thing that is called the working memory, and it is this part of the brain that gets really engaged if you do something. Whatever you learn through that stays with you forever. And this part of the brain is just hard to activate if you try to learn by watching videos or, doing quizzes. A lot of existing training materials used in corporations or anywhere are not really teaching anything, because, the completion rate for like standard slideshow is so low that it's better to spend 5 minutes in VR rather than watching an hour-long video, because you just turn yourself off and don't really remember anything.
Start daydreaming.
Yeah, I think the latest study, right? VR makes training stickier. It says that learners are 76% more effective, 275% more confident, and even cuts mistakes in high stakes fields like surgery, which obviously we operate in a high stakes field when it comes to public safety. And I think one thing that you talk about, a lot, Rick, it was that 80% number, like training in VR. Those who do it, they remember 80% of what they learned a year later, versus a classroom setting, you sort of fades in a week. That's incredible.
So then they get your first client, and then what happens?
So then there was a pretty tough period of trying to sell anything, using this horrible device that was just not really, interesting, or it was just making people sick. VR was not ready at all, and we refused to accept it. We were so excited about it, and we still at that time believed that technology is what's interesting for clients. It took us a while to understand that, in fact, what they really want is solve their problems, and technology is just a tool to do so. I think one of the breakthrough moments that we had was we went to this trade show in LA called VR LA, and we had this booth. Lots of people coming through. One guy came in, and he didn't have a chance to see anything. He was in a rush, but he left his jacket and his business card right? And it turns out he was one of the VR leader at a company called HTC, which was back then one of the main players. So we had his jacket hostage, so we had to come back. He came back and we showed him what we do, and he said, you guys are doing some really cool stuff, and we often need someone to build VR stuff for our clients, and they started bringing some incredible brands to us, and suddenly we were working with Museum of Natural History in New York, building stuff with Smithsonian, building stuff with where NASA was cooperating with us, and that was, I think, the breakthrough where we finally got a foothold in USA, and we never looked back since then. But even then, VR was moving in, I would say, kind of waves. So there was always like either VR is the future, everything's going to be in VR, the metaverse is coming, or VR is dead, it's never going to work, right? Either of two. And that would go like every 2 years. And only recently it kind of stabilized, but for a while we were in this roller coaster.
And why do you think it's stabilized?
Well, I think it stabilized because there was a period where many companies would use VR just to kind of show what's possible as a gimmick, and this would not really convert into anything useful, right? And also VR was just too complicated. If you look how complicated it was to actually have a VR experience, 4 or 5 years ago, where you had to have special base stations, sensors that you had to put around, then a powerful gaming PC, then connect the headset to that. You needed like 6 power outlets just to make it work. I remember coming to client meeting, taking out my suitcase, and in the middle of setting this up, I could see in the eyes of my potential clients that we're not going to do it. It's impossible. And if you fast forward to now, I have this,
right in front of you,
and that's all I need, right? It's one autonomous headset, and it's still kind of clanky. It still takes way too much time to be useful. But there are certain areas where it was proven that this works. We have a lot of gaming titles that are doing really well, and we have certain industries where basically VR helps.
Yep.
And Axon is one of the companies that I think makes the most sense of VR in that space.
And how did the industry solve the motion sickness problem?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because the way this works is basically your brain is wired to protect you against food poisoning, right? Because, when you were running around in like Neolithic forests, that was one of the worst things that could happen. So when there is a disconnect between what you see and what you feel you should see, you get the signal from your brain that tells you to stop eating. This is basically this motion sickness. The same thing happens when you're in a car.
Yeah, I get super motion
I do too.
in vehicles if I try to read anything.
Yeah, because your brain says, hey, we're moving, and I'm looking at stuff that is not moving, right?
Right.
And
I mean, I was one of those people, like, I'm not trying VR because I do get super motion sickness.
And up to this day, a lot of people that tried VR in those early days are just traumatized.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it. It's hard to get them.
But I will tell you, like, because we put a lot of people through that headset right there, and VR training. Like, we have to tell a lot of people, like, no, you will not.
It's different.
But and once they do it, they get it.
Yeah, and they just fixed it. Like, there are little things, but brain is extremely sensitive. So, like the first headset, they did not have 6 degrees of freedom tracking. So if I leaned forward, whatever I'm seeing would not come closer to me, right? I could only like look around in 360 degrees, and that was enough for your brain to be like, there's something wrong. This is not how the world looks.
Right.
Once it becomes more and more realistic, and you get every single little movement that you make is represented accurately in that virtual reality space, you stop feeling nauseous. And right now, I think very few people feel
But actually, Hans Moritz, our head of R&D, still has not tried any of our VR experiences.
Because of that?
Because he's terrified of getting motion sick. He had a bad
no.
experience early on. I was actually going to take in some seasickness pills and load him up. No, you're okay. Like, no excuses.
I should talk to him. I get like really sick, but no, I like the newer headsets and the new technology. I don't feel a thing. What are your views? Just curious. I mean, do you see Palmer Luckey as like the godfather, even though he's a young guy, of VR? I mean, with Oculus and everything that's sort of developed from there. Like, what are your thoughts on?
I mean, for sure. I mean, he's an incredible guy. I had the pleasure to meet him several times, and he basically brought VR back from the death, and he from the underworld, and he did it in his room, right? He constructed the first headset, and
As a teenager.
and as a teenager, he was like 18. You can still find the boards online where he kind of reports his work as he's doing that. And that was one thing. And then the second thing, and I think the guy needs a lot of credit, is what Mark Zuckerberg did. Because without Mark Zuckerberg, this wouldn't go that far, because he believed in that. Yep. He bought Oculus for like $2 billion. Yep. And he financed, he's spending so much money in, to build that.
Do you know how much
platform.
He spent roughly so far?
I think it's like 30, 40 billion. I don't know. It's just tens of billions every year, and it's not generating profit for them. So
and they even changed the name of the company to Meta.
Right.
Yeah.
For the metaverse.
Exactly.
He's a believer.
Yeah. And a funny story was that I was doing some business with Meta around the time where they bought the Oculus. I was in Dublin, and I had the first headset with me, the first prototype. I just bought it. And I said, hey, you guys just bought the Oculus. And they said, oh, do you have one? Can we see it? So I was actually showing the Oculus to the Meta in Europe, because they didn't have the prototype yet. But yeah, I think Palmer Luckey is for sure is the guy who made this technology come to life, and it's still going.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about different waves. Like I don't know if there's a name for the wave that we're in now, or you can give it a name. But like, for those that don't know, as you mentioned, Facebook at the time changed their name to Meta. They bought Oculus for this insane amount of money. Then things happened. There was a falling out, and they fired Palmer Luckey. And now they've since come back together. All that's been made up, and then that's led to this newer partnership with Microsoft, where they've taken over a $22 billion contract with the Army on that next gen headset. Like it just seems like things now are getting ready to explode, at least because of all the interest back and the money going into VR and AR and everything like that.
Yeah, I think that actually the next era of VR will start with AR, because it just looks that AR is much more needed at this point than VR.
So AR being augmented reality.
Yes.
So take a minute and explain to the viewers, like, what's the difference between VR and
Sure.
AR?
So basically the difference is that in VR, you immerse yourself in virtual world totally. So you don't see anything else. Like you're in virtual reality, you don't see your body, you see like a...
You're putting on this big headset and
exactly.
the world around you disappears.
You're
not
there.
something you'd ever wear out in public.
Peter, I'm actually surprised Rick did not make us do this whole podcast in a VR headset. Actually, now as I mentioned that, I need to shut up.
I've walked around in public. Now that
ideas.
it does pass through, I have walked around in public, but I was born without the gene for a sense of shame. Most people will not wear this out in public.
No, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's pretty bulky. It's still pretty heavy, and you just can't spend too much time in it. And at the same time, there's very little things you can do while wearing it. You can play a game, but when it comes to work, there's not that much you can do.
Right.
However, with AR, you can enhance whatever you're seeing. You can just get this access to all this information. And what Palmer Luckey is doing now with Anduril, with Microsoft, is they are building the AR headset of the future for the military. So you can imagine that the soldiers are going to wear some sort of glasses, and they're going to get all this data, live feed from drones, information about, I don't know, distance of artillery shelling.
Basically the Terminator headset.
Basically,
like, you'll see the guy and the readouts of all the data you need.
Yeah, the information is key in conflict, right? So it's going to just help them so much. At the same time, they will be able to change the way they see the world, right? So imagine looking at the world through different filters. So you can see, for example, your friends, are green and your foes are red. All those little things make your reaction faster by those little
Or
seconds.
my kids are going to put the Snapchat filter in, and then they're going to turn me into like the uber fat guy with like the triple chins, and then they'll turn my daughter. I've seen this movie before, just through their smartphone. She'll turn herself into the little reindeer with the cute little button nose.
Yeah.
Now,
But you're going to blend the real world and the virtual world. So things you screw around with on your phone right now.
Exactly. And so that's AR, right? So you see what you normally see, but you can just add and enhance it with 3-dimensional space. And if you add AI to the mix, it just becomes extremely powerful.
I mean, right now, AR, most people, if they're following this, they think about the Apple Vision Pro. I mean, I guess that's probably about the only thing out there right now that most people would think about when it comes to augmented reality.
Well, for now, yes. There's also going to be a large number of products being released in upcoming months and years. There's going to be AR glasses from Meta, which are going to, I think, blow people's minds when they see them.
Well, they've already released like a $5,000 prototype I tried to buy one, and they don't. You have to like apply to get them. It was just a proof of concept. But Caitlin Kalinowski, who's on our board, actually ran the Oculus hardware group at Meta.
Oh, wow.
So for a little while, I had an inside scoop. So she developed the Quest 3 and was working on their first AR glasses. And then she left for the only cooler job on earth than running AR at Meta, and that's running robotics at OpenAI.
Yeah, that's super cool. Rick does go out and buy the latest, greatest technology. Like he did get the Apple Vision Pro before probably anyone else. Do you want to tell the story how you just completely embarrassed your son?
So, well, first thing I would say is one member of my board of directors has accused me that this company is nothing but a front to pay for my technology habit so that I can go buy.
This is a substantial front.
Yeah, it's turned into one. So yeah, I got the Apple Vision Pro, and I was playing with it at home. My wife was gone, and my son had his first, it wasn't really a date, but he had a girl over to the house.
Your teenage son.
My teenage son. I think he was in middle school at the time, like 8th grade. Perfect time for awkward parent moments. And so they're in the living room, and they, we've got a separator between the kitchen area and the living room. They've got the door closed, and I've got my my Apple Vision Pro on, and I'm actually eating dinner in it. It's surprisingly cool experience. Like I can see my food. I'm eating. I'm watching T-Pain concert. I've got my Carbon Voice and my other apps open. And
right. Peter, he's sitting at the dinner table with a freaking big.
I can totally see it.
It's a big headset. It's not something small. Yeah. It's not glasses. Eating dinner and everything else. But go ahead.
Yep. And then I would open the door and I'd pop my head in and I'd check on the kids. They'd see my head pop through. Basically wearing something that looks about like this. Like, hey guys, how's it going? Oh, actually, you know what? I can see you guys in here too. I could do it in the. I'm actually in the D-Drone Defender app though. We'll come back to that.
Oh my God.
It was super fun, and my son was like completely embarrassed. He's like, "Yeah, that
seems like a cool dad. Come on."
Well, I think so. Worse. I don't think they thought so.
That hasn't gone anywhere since, as we were talking before the show started. Because there's just been no development with apps.
Look, the device itself, I think the Apple Vision Pro was an incredible device. I tested it as much as I could, and the quality of image was just incredible. The quality of how it was done, it was crazy.
Dinner even tastes better when you're wearing the Apple Vision Pro.
It was an incredible demo of what's coming, but I don't know why, whether it was their plan, that this wasn't that they weren't that interested, and they didn't really have any strategy, I think, for building content for that. So you could get this expensive piece of technology, but there was nothing to do there, right?
Wait a minute, I went to the T-Pain concert in VR.
Okay.
Peter, we had a group of 15, 20 police leaders for sort of an AI retreat. He had just gotten the headset, and he goes, "I want to show," and he walks into the room. First of all, has it on the dinner that we were having. And the app that he shows them to show them how great this is the T-Pain concert, which is, again,
full of explicit lyrics.
Full of explicit lyrics. Like I'm just sitting there like.
Well, that was the thing. There was not that much you could show.
Yeah.
You had like I don't know. There was like few nice panoramas of
There's
like
the dinosaur
Yosemite Park, and that was it. But I wouldn't really underestimate what they did. Like honestly, I think that. What they shows that they know how to do it. There were some little things that made it hard to show to your friends, because you had to set up your eye, the eye control.
Yeah, the calibration.
Yeah, so you couldn't just give it to someone. But I think that we will all be surprised with what's coming. I think that this is something that there's going to be a major shock when the next generation of headsets comes out.
And what do you think is going to be, headsets or glasses like Meta's? And I know others are doing glasses as well.
Well, they're going to go. You can see that they're going like two ways, right? So basically, the headsets are still more aimed at, I would say, geeks, early adopters, gamers,
sitting right there.
Exactly, or companies that are using it, like Axon, right? So that they have a use case already. But with AR glasses, it's going to go really, really wide. And at some point, they're gonna just mix into one thing. You'll be able to switch between VR and AR in real time. And if you're at your home, you can just click a button, and you will be suddenly, on Mars, right, or somewhere, in the dungeon, watching a fantasy movie, or you can just see whatever you're doing, right? So I think that this is in the next 2-3 years, but I think that the AR is going to be the route to mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would actually say Apple won me over on their approach. So there's sort of two ways you could do augmented reality. One, you wear see-through glasses like you're wearing now, Mike, and then it projects a screen onto the glass. I think the downside of that is it's really hard to try to like match a digital image and a real thing you're seeing overlaid and make it feel natural. What Apple did is they basically said, we're going to take the whole world in through the cameras and then combine it and then feed you back an integrated experience. And what's really cool about it is you can tune up or down how much of the real world you want. So you could be like, hey, I want just the real world with like a little display. Or I can be like, you know what? I want to feel like I'm sitting on the moon, which I was doing in my kitchen. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to have the moon, everything back here. And then there's like a little window into the real world. Or I could go entirely be where I'm sitting on the moon or in a 3D movie theater or a 360 video. So I thought that was pretty powerful. But I think for it to go mainstream, like I would wear the Geordie Star Trek glasses for that kind of experience. I think the most folks are going to prefer the see-through version of AR with the.
But I think that Apple might win this mostly because of the environment that they have. They have iPhones, they have their Macs, they have all this stuff, and you have the one account that connects all this. And the ease of use is extremely important. And one of the most incredible examples of VR and AR I've ever seen are the personas that they built. Meta is making the same thing. So, look, I just flew here from Poland. Also to meet you, we had some stuff to discuss because still I feel that if we meet in person, it's going to be a more efficient meeting that we're going to do a call because there's so much more to communication than just voice. There's body language. I can show you stuff. It's just for some reason like it feels better if you meet someone in person. Remote meetings are not solving the problem. But when I did tests with having meetings in virtual reality using Meta technology, using Apple technology, where I saw someone's avatar that had real-time, facial movement, real-time body movement. I could see their face, I could see their expression, I could see their hands. That felt so much like a real-life meeting.
Did you get to try this experimental tech, like the one that Lex Friedman did with Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah. So,
you got a chance to use that? Dude, you're connected.
So it's really it's kind of insane, if you think about it. And I think that the moment this hits the market, where people realize that, wow, I can actually meet with someone, feel like I'm in the same room. Now add to this real-time AI translation that is, going to be available. It's already there, basically. So this is going to make remote work on a
real-time translation is available on your Axon Body 4 commercial park. Back to our story.
Yeah, so basically, I think it will make us all so much closer. So you'll be able to meet with your team in Vietnam and feel like you actually flew there and met them. And this maybe doesn't sound like much, but I think it's going to make cooperation way more efficient.
Yeah, actually, a little hint. Peter and he's already working on a little prototype system where I'm going to start sending VR headsets with our sales team, and I'll be able to virtually join a police chief in VR somewhere in the next, what do you think, the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I would love to have that ready for the next IACP. But, but look, for now, you still have to send the headset, right? You're going to be this early adopter that is kind of pushing for this to work. But imagine in 2-3 years, maybe 5, when everybody already have those headsets, right? And they just, click your link and they are there immediately, that's going to be a whole different story.
Well, I mean, speaking of IACP, which is the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the world's oldest and largest nonprofit of police leaders. I mean, you two teamed up and put something together for the last conference last October, which I'm going to be honest, Peter, I thought it was going to be an absolute and utter failure.
I was at that point as well, so I forgive you.
Not that I didn't try, but I just didn't, not that I didn't, like, I knew, well, I didn't know. I mean, one, we're going to ask, because you have thousands of police leaders and you're on a convention floor and everyone's coming through there. And so what we're going to ask them to do, what Rick was going to ask them to do, is come into this room, put on that headset, and sit there, not for a few minutes. It was it 18 or 19?
18 minutes.
18 minutes. And when I heard 18 minutes, it's like, Rick, no one is going to stay for 18 minutes. And if they hear 18 minutes, they're going to turn around and walk away. Turns out, as usual, I was completely wrong. The line was around the corner, out the door, down the hallway, the hallway. and they stayed for the 18 minutes. And it's probably been one of the biggest things we've done in terms of marketing for a customer, a police leader, to understand what we do, because it was just, it was incredible.
True story. We had 2 shows back to back. We had the Chiefs of Police Conference and the AUSA, the Association of the U.S. Army. Now, look, with police, we have relationships with most people. So there we can make a little bit, if we make a mistake and stub our toe, it's not the end of the world. But with the military, this is a new customer. And we were trying this new, Peter and I collaborated on the script together. We wrote the script on the history of humanity's relationship with weapons. And basically, the storyline is we've been getting really good at killing each other, but we sort of hit the end of the line with the thermonuclear weapon. Like, there's no point in making anything bigger and deadlier because we can destroy entire cities. And so we wanted to tell this story that, like, since the 1960s, the world has been getting more precise. Like, we now use drones and hyper-targeted GPS. And in my vision of the future, the real way you win is if you could put everybody to sleep on the battlefield and just scoop them all up and they'd wake up in custody. What a far better world that would be than blowing people's limbs off, et cetera. Now, there's a long road to get there, but I believe this arc of history is that we're going away from more and more lethality and more destruction to more precision. That was a very risky message to give to the U.S. military.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had a double risk. We're doing this risky message, like, is this going to fall flat? And we're going to ask these people who don't know us very well to spend 18 minutes in VR. So I actually had a panic attack. This doesn't happen to me too often, but I woke up the weekend before and I was like, oh my God, I've spent we spent well over $1 million on the production. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the headsets. We'd reconfigured our most important 2 events of the year. And at the same time, I had this crazy idea with Mike to do a rock opera at our after parties that we throw.
Critically acclaimed.
And I hired a woman who's a good friend. Her name is Dream Rockwell. She puts on amazing shows. She would do Elon Musk's birthday party every year for like a decade. But the challenge is I didn't give her any time to rehearse. So me and GPT wrote the script together, and I gave it to Dream, and they flew in hot. And so I had a double, I was like, oh my God, I might be 0 for 2. I might completely shit the bed on the experience in the booth. And the Rise of Intelligence, our very sci-fi, weird rock opera.
I would say in my mind, we went 2 for 2, but I think most people are going to say we went 1 for. I mean, it was a hit. The VR was a hit.
VR was an enormous hit.
VR was an enormous hit.
My favorite moment, we had this 80-year-old, 90-year-old. I mean, she was really frail and at the end of her life. God, that sounded terrible. But you know what I mean. Yeah. She was not a tech kind of person. And in our booth, the other thing we do is we give away these stuffed animals. It's just massively effective. People love. They feel like they won the state fair. You come to the Axon booth.
Still got one.
And so this lady came up to me. She didn't know I was the CEO. She saw me stand in the booth, and she said, "Young man, can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure." And she says, "Hey, I came here to get the dog, but that movie and that headset thing, oh my God. Like, I feel like I understand you guys. What you're doing is amazing, and I'm going to go buy the stock." And I was like, that is a home run.
It was a home run. And I knew Rick told me the panic attack he had, and he does not have that often.
I flew in early to be there at one of the shows I was not supposed to be at because I wanted to be there if it failed. My fear is if it failed, the sales team would have been like, "Wow, tuck the headsets away and give up." And I was like, we are taking the hill. If this thing fails, we're going to fail spectacularly. We're going to stick it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there were 2 parts to it. One, the technology is bad. We talked about. You put the headset on, it worked. So it's no longer like all this. All you had to do was just put it on and click it. So most anybody could get it going. Our team, in terms of, it didn't take a whole lot of setup. And then again, it was the storytelling. It wasn't like, here's a product. Here's a VR product feature of everything we have. You were telling a story, and I think that's what made it. I think one thing you don't know, Peter, is doubted Rick again. After IACP, we have groups of police leaders come to headquarters all the time, and Rick goes, "Hey, let's ask them, would they like us to mail them a VR headset, and then they could show it to their mayors, their city council, their community members, their command staff, so they can also experience what this police leader has experienced." And we all sat around. I mean, I know I sound really bad. We're like, "Rick, nobody's going to want these headsets. We can't keep them in stock. Like, we cannot every time we say, hey, once a police leader goes through it, they're blown away. And we say, hey, if you'd like us to send it to you home with you, just let us know." We can literally not keep it in stock. And it's helping educate, those around them, like mayors and city council members, like, literally cannot keep it in stock.
Yeah, I think you were extremely bold with what you did. You know, when we were building this project and I was talking to my team, you know, and they were like, how long is it going to be? 18 minutes? And they were like, no, it's going to be 6 at most. And my team was terrified. You know, it was a lot of fun. I love the project because it has this historical part at the beginning, and I love history. So I got to make, like, you know, those different periods of history, medieval times, you know, 16th century, and it was a blast. But my
Big
team
catapult,
with catapults, I just loved it, and that was something I always wanted to do. But my team was terrified, and you know, and it was not only the duration, also the scale, because you had like 64 headsets, and I don't think I've never seen a presentation that big. Even if you go to like official Meta events, I'm not sure if they have that many headsets at once. That was crazy. I was a little bit terrified, but I gotta say, I got a little bit of relief a few days before the show because we had some people, I showed it to my parents, and I was just waiting for them to just take the headset off. Like, okay, I'm done. But they went to the whole thing. I was like, that was cool. I was like, wasn't this too long? And they were like, no. Like, how long do you think it took? And they were like, I don't know, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They didn't even feel almost 20 minutes of action.
I like the tank when it comes over. That's when the tank,
I like that too.
The World War. I think, you know, and we talk a lot about, you know, startups and being an entrepreneur, and we've done many episodes on that. I think, like, Rick being a founder and CEO, you being a founder and CEO, also, like, you pushed our teams to take these risks that other companies who are, you know, have professional managers might not do it, because everybody internally told you no, Rick. And I'm sure as you were mentioning, they were skeptical as well inside your company.
I mean, yeah, the risk versus the size of the company ratio in Axon is just insane. I can't imagine doing anything like this so quickly anywhere else.
Well, speaking of which, we're actually in a little bit of panic mode right now because we're working on the sequel. And this year, it is a walking experience. So you're going to walk in and out of different worlds. Last year, we had people sitting down. This year, and we have about a month left to dial it in, and we've got, you know, some technical challenges.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of crazy. You know, we're going to have so many people walking through it. We had to build our own location system. Yeah, I'm kind of stressed about that one. I think it's going to be getting more stressful in the coming weeks, but I hope it's going to work this time as well.
So there's going to be 2 different openings on this one. One for the police. You're going to be standing next to JFK, like as he gives his famous moon speech, and then we're going to put you next to the Saturn V rocket. Wow. This is Peter's idea, standing on the platform as the rocket launches past you. It's intense. And then for our military customers, we're going to start on a battlefield where you're being hit with a swarm of drones. And then we're going to show how our D-drone technology can help defend against the biggest threat in modern warfare now, which is drones.
I assume you're excited about this IECP, and we're going to do what AUSA is, obviously, as you just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, I am. I am also a little bit terrified.
Stressed.
You know, we try to talk people out of this. Some people, but you know, Rick is a persistent dude, and I think there's a good chance it's gonna work. I think that what is cool about it is that, you know, the last year, you were sitting in a chair, right? And for many, this kind of looked like a movie, because if you don't move around, it looks a little bit like a movie that you look around. You can look around inside, but it's not a movie. It's a whole 3-dimensional scene. So I really like the aspect of being able to take a step forward, because that's where you're like, oh wow, this is actually a reality that I can walk around. And I hope that as people get more educated in the future about VR, we'll be able to add more interactivity. I would love the users to be able to, you know, pick a taser, right, and then shoot a zombie with it, or do something like that. But it's going to be another very bold presentation, and we have some, you know, fail safes. We have a version that is going to work when you sit, if something goes wrong. But I think it's going to be all right.
We talked about, like, how we're going to see the future, be a part of the future in terms of AI and these different like VR is going to be, and AR will be a part of that, where you're interacting with, like, other agents. I mean, AI agents like Annie or...
Well, Eve is my preferred voice now on Grok.
Or Eve.
And it is getting so human so fast. It's unbelievable. Yesterday, I had a conversation with Grok about asking whether it passed the Turing test, where AI, you know, is indistinguishable from human. For me, it has passed the Turing test. I'm actually going to do that as live demos. That whole conversation was so stimulating. But let's come back to VR. And the thing we said about risk too, like if at Axon everything we do works, we're not trying hard enough. Like one of these, Mike, is going to bomb. I would actually say the first night of the rise of intelligence,
It bombed.
it got panned. But by night 4, we stuck with it. And remember, people were telling us, Rick, you got to stop this. We're like, nope, we're coming back. We're making some edits.
They were telling,
By
they were
night 4
telling me
was pretty
too.
good.
I saw the first one. It was pretty crazy. Yeah.
By night 4, I actually heard from people in the Hollywood show business, including my roommate from college, who's a real Rick skeptic. He likes to keep me in line. He said our show had the fastest acceleration in the rate of improvement over 4 nights he's ever seen, because it went from absolute chaos to it was pretty good.
I mean, there was only, I don't know, 52 acts the first night, which was like running 4 hours long. That was
well, and we did have a pretty spectacular failure. We were using AI we wanted to generate fun pictures of people in science fiction characters when they came to the party, and we realized we wouldn't have time to do that because it was just taking too long. And so again, my old college roommate, I had him come out, and I was like, okay, Jason, it's your job to make these. And he said, look, there's not going to be time to do it at the door. And so we said, all right, we'll surprise people. So we would go out, and we knew who was going to be coming each night, and we'll find their pictures online, and we'll surprise them with these AI-generated images. And most people loved it. But we had one that we just, out of respect to the person, I don't want to go into the details, but we had one that ended up, this person had a medical condition, and the way the AI re-rendered her really kind of traumatized her. And at first when I heard about it, I was worried like somebody was being oversensitive. But then once I understood the situation, I was mortified and embarrassed. And I learned you should never make AI images of people without their permission and show it publicly, even if it's well-intended.
Yeah, I did a similar thing. You know, last year we had the 10th anniversary of Immersion Labs.
Wow.
And
congratulations.
Yeah, and I thank you. And you know, I love like card games like Magic the Gathering, you know. So we did like a whole deck of cards, like in the science fiction kind of a style, where we did AI pictures of all the employees and gave them like superpowers based on their actual work. And that was pretty cool. But yeah, we had to work hard to make all those pictures look nice.
Did you have anybody get upset about it?
Nobody told me, but they were really excited.
We actually had a really interesting conversation about what our company does from a safety perspective with AI to make sure these things don't happen. And I actually said, well, what's really embarrassing here was we have tons of safety mechanisms for Axon's products. We have a whole advisory board that reviews everything. But because this was a party, this was entirely me and my college roommate, like by the seat of our pants. And we made a really terrible mistake in that case. And I really regret that. But, you know, it's sometimes, you know, you do make mistakes and you learn from them. So we'll see. Hopefully this year's VR experience goes off without a hitch. But we're pushing the envelope again.
Well, when I heard it's going to be this walking experience, I was like, oh boy. But and to be clear, like I always say, it's going to be. I actually agree with Rick, and sometimes I get criticized or like you need to push back on Rick at certain times. But Rick is right enough at the time that I he's developed this level of obviously trust within the company. Plus, it's his company, or he's the CEO of the company. But like he sees things, and I'm sure like you being the founder and CEO, you see things within the company that some of us just can't. And sometimes we have to go on trust that we're going to get it right a lot, but we might not get it right sometimes. And if we built up trust and relationships with our customers, like we can overcome that.
So let's come back. I want to actually come back down history lane for a moment on VR, because we talk about risk and failure. This was not easy. Like when we first started doing so our first thing we want to do with VR was taser training. And so we originally, you know, first of all, we couldn't, there's two major companies. One's Meta, one is HTC. We work with HTC, even though the head of hardware at Meta was on our board. Meta had decided to really go after consumer, and they weren't supporting third-party hardware. And we knew we were going to need to be able to track the taser in VR. In fact, so we started initially thinking we could track your hands, and that was a total disaster. Yeah. Then we had to reboot, and we did the wrist tracking. Were we doing some of that with you guys, or was that all internal?
Yet.
So that was all internal.
We did only the stuff that worked, you know.
I love it. Yeah, and then we finally, working together with our internal team with Peter, we ended up doing, this is just one of the weapons we make. It's for a gun to be used in VR, and we have different models. We have Glock and Smith & Wesson. We've got the Taser 10, et cetera. We had to basically bite the bullet and build these with built-in infrared trackers on them. And then the first thing that we did with this was actually Taser versus Zombies. You guys built for us.
Yeah, we rebuilt it. Yeah, there was like initial version, and then we came in and you kind of fixed some stuff there.
Well, I actually forgot about. Well, I haven't not forgot about Taser versus Zombies. So I forgot you were involved. That like there turned out to be an enormous hit. Which again was like, oh, we're going to do Taser versus Zombies in this game, but in the end, you're teaching folks how to use, training them on Taser devices, and they're getting much more efficient playing a game. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, looking back, it's like intuitive. Oh yeah, of course you're going to do it. But at the time, it did not seem that intuitive, especially with our sort of customer base. Like, we're going to put them in a headset and let them shoot some zombies. It is not just fascinating and fun. It makes them more effective.
Yeah, and that was, one of the turning point for my company, that event. I remember we built this, we fixed Taser versus Zombies. There were some problems there, and we went to this, I think was TaserCon, and you had no idea who we are. And we just did this little project, and we were kind of struggling back then. We had a big fallout with our investor. We were in a really tough spot. And I was at that event, and I see Rick surrounded by people, and I was with my business partner Bart, and I said, screw it, I'm going there, right? And I went through this crowd, and I said, hey man, I don't know if you remember that, but I said something like, hey man, we did the zombie app, and you were like, oh cool, and you gave me this golden coin. Which was like a surreal scene, like from a movie. I was looking like, what is this? And there was your assistant next, and he said something like, he gets through the barrier, something like that. And he gave me this magical coin, and it had your number. Mm-hmm. And I used that number, and then I got a text from your assistant that we're meeting you the same day, like 2 hours. And then we started talking, and then since then we're doing like 10 different projects, but it all started with that meeting at the lunch period in some hotel somewhere.
I remember because they fixed Taser vs. Zombies, did a great job. And then we were introducing Taser 10. And so we ran a test where we put a bunch of these master instructors. These are people who have been using Taser weapons for more than a decade. These are the world's experts, but they'd never used the new Taser 10. And we had half of them go through Taser vs. Zombies and the other half not. And these highly trained people, just from playing the game, if I remember correctly, they were like 2 or 3 times faster in getting darts on target. They were more accurate. A huge performance improvement from just playing less than 5 minutes in this game.
And I think, I'm not sure if you fully realize how big that is for the VR industry, because you are actually proving that VR helps in such a critical area, like saving lives, and this is just incredible because there are very few examples like that. Most cases, it's still kind of more of a gimmick, but here you have a direct proof that it helps muscle memory, and officers feel much more comfortable using a taser in life-threatening situations.
Well, we have we talked about it on the podcast. I don't know if we've shown the actual video. We had an officer who in the morning had just gotten her Taser 10, goes through the VR training, the skills and drills, and goes out on patrol. They confront someone who's had who's in a mental health crisis, and they're talking to him.
And they believe he has a knife. He said he had a knife.
Had a knife, but then he charges. He starts full run, and she had the confidence, and she says this because she went through the VR training that morning. She pulls out the Taser 10, which has a effectiveness range up to 40 feet. And she felt confident because of that VR training. She takes the shot with the Taser 10 and probably, incapacitates him, takes him down at about 32, 33 feet.
It's unbelievable. Two shots.
Like it is. If you watch the video, and what are known as cover officers, so there are other officers there who had their handguns out. One might have had a long gun out. Like they would have had no choice but to take a life there if he kept coming. But because of the VR training, like I've never, it almost brought me to tears the first time I heard her tell the story and then watched the video, because that guy they would have had to,
he'd be dead.
He'd be dead.
Yeah, I mean, there is this historical analogy that, in the past when they introduced like the first muskets, and then they added bayonets on them, right? Mm-hmm. It was extremely hard for the military of in England, France, to train the soldiers to actually use the bayonet as it's supposed to, because their muscle memory forced them to grab the gun by its barrel and hit the enemy as like a club. Right. That's such a strong instinct, right? Yeah. And it's similar with this. If you have an officer that shoots gun all the time and they only get to shoot taser a few times, it's just, you're not thinking clearly when you're under threat, right?
Did you help us do Taser versus crash test dummies? Was that Immersion Labs as well?
Yeah.
Do you know why?
It was offensive, probably, like this America. So probably.
Do you want to
I was out talking to a major California police agency, and I was explaining, they go, oh, why'd you guys do zombies? I said, look, the reason we chose zombies is we want to disconnect from reality, because we don't want anybody to think that we're training cops to be trigger happy with a taser, right? With the taser weapon, taser 10 or taser 7, whichever one they're training on. But they need a lot of reps. And so the best way to do that, we can't have everything be like you've got to negotiate with the person, et cetera, which is what you want to do in the real world. But to get reps in, actually, this is like shooting free throws. And you want to hit moving targets. And so we realized, well, with zombies, it's like, it's obviously not the real world. It's a game. It's a zombie apocalypse. It's a safe way for you to get lots of shots. And it's more stressful because you're never going to have 10 people coming at you in the real world, but you will with the, in the zombie game. And this sheriff looked at me and he said, well, Rick, here in California, they're going to say that we're now training our officers that the public are zombies, or, and look, this was post George Floyd. It's sort of one of the dark points there. And so we talked to them. We said, well, what if we did, crash test dummies? And he said, okay, yeah, that's better. So we basically did the taser crash test dummy version. And so in the app, I think you can choose which one you want to use.
Yeah. And didn't you say, Rick, I forget the exact quote. So you can, you've learned more in VR training in terms of shooting tasers because you had to lead people than you did in 30 years of shooting.
Yeah, I learned more in 5 minutes. And this was before immersion. This was our internal version, which the zombies were like Roblox characters. They were not at all realistic, but I'd never had to shoot a taser weapon at moving targets before. And just the fact they're moving, you're like, oh, wow, this is, I actually realized it was harder than I thought. It actually got me really excited about Taser 10 because we shifted the way the weapon worked to go to just individually targeting the darts. But I realized for 30 years, I've been shooting basically a target on a stand that doesn't move. And now with Taser vs. Zombies, we had clothing and movement and obstacles. And, sometimes they get back up. You get a wire break. We can put you through all these scenarios and build all those skills. So right now, I'd say we're still in really the early days. So we started our first VR training we did was just 360 videos, right? Before we could, because we were struggling to get the taser working early on, right? It was super buggy. And so we had to start, okay, what's our first product? Well, we'll just film videos like a mental health crisis. And even that, it's more immersive because you're watching a video, but you're in a headset and you're sort of in the scene. We have one on officer suicide where we've seen officers cry because of the emotional intensity. And then from there, once we finally got the taser weapons dialed in, which took about 2 years, and again, we think about taking risks. Early on, our customer satisfaction on VR was in the tank. You remember, I mean, they were complaining. They were like, I paid for this thing. It's a piece of shit.
I had to apologize to a customer just 2 days ago about the early versions.
But we're like, hey, stick with us. We shared our roadmap. And hey, by the way, you've got these early, so you're getting some value from the 360 video. We call it community engagement training. Then we got all the taser weapons and stuff working. And so now we have, I would say, skills and drills. So you're in a firing range where you're learning how to work around clothing, shoot a moving target, shoot them in different positions, what happens when a wire breaks or if you have to re-energize. And you're building all those skills, but without really decision making. It's just the fundamentals. It's like getting ready to play a basketball game. You got to get your fundamentals first. Now we're just really starting to get into the exciting stuff, which is real world scenarios where you're interacting with people and you're talking to them and they're talking back to you and you've got to make decisions.
But when you say real world, you mean real world rendered by AI?
Yeah, it's like playing Call of Duty.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, but you can move in the world and
you can create that world, right? That's what we're going to build. You'll be able to basically recreate any real life situation with a real-time editor, kind of like building your house in Sims, right? Or like in Minecraft. Just that's going to be
I mean, that is the future.
Yeah, so by the way, Peter, is a big part of our team. Yes, he runs his own company, but he works really closely. We have our in-house team that does a lot of the view on platform stuff.
Great team.
And then we have Peter and his team. I kind of throw him at the crazier, riskier projects. So actually, everybody here remembers our first guest was Espen the Viking, who developed this electrocombatives course. And so, let's take two crazy smart guys and put them together. And so I asked Peter to go up to Norway and say, hey, let's let Espen the Viking.
He's a badass guy.
Developed
He's a
straight. So
real
yeah, tell us
Viking.
about that. How'd that go?
No, so we met with Espen, and he showed us that basically the way he trains is so much different than the traditional training. So instead of just standing and shooting a target in front of you, he said it's all about the movement, the angles. You're standing, someone is running at you. What do? Do you take a step backward, step forward? What if someone grabs you? And he basically said that I would love to have a tool where I could just create different situations, so I can see what's going on. There's a new story in the news. I can see that a cop or someone got hurt in some situation. Can I recreate that and make sure that it's never going to happen again? And funny story was that we were pitching something like this to Axon a while ago, but there were so many things that Axon was building that it was too early. But we said, guess what? We kind of have something like this already. I mean, a demo. And we went from there and we started working with him. And I think it's going to turn into a really cool product. And the guy has such an incredible knowledge on how things work. He's like a SWAT, a jiu-jitsu master. He's like I
think he's got like PhD, or he's working on in like virtual reality
it's just
training.
Unfair, at this point.
So do you see the? I mean, would you characterize sort of current VR training, like you were describing our community-based training, as video-based? Like, there's only so many options. Like, you got to film the video, you render it into VR, but pretty soon you figure out there's only so much that's happening in the video. And the future is really AI, where you're interacting with AI and like responding back to you.
Yeah, so we're kind of doing both at this point, right? And with video, I was initially against. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of 360 videos because they're not that immersive. You cannot move in them, right? But we learned, and that's another lesson from that. The officers are actually happy with it, and because the realism of a video, it's just making it more empathetic. There are some, and we made this little technology where you can actually interact with the characters that you see on the screen. So you can take a taser and shoot tase a character in that video, and the hit is recorded, and you gotta hit them in the right spot and all that. So I think it's an interesting solution, and I think it's going to be a very interesting moment in upcoming years where we have two technologies competing. One, the videos, we were thinking that, okay, videos are kind of done. We're going to do them for a while. It's all going to be real-time rendered 3D. But now you have AI. And suddenly AI can turn a video into a three-dimensional environment, right? It's very compute heavy. It takes time, but the pace of AI growth is incredible. And I wouldn't be surprised if within 2 years, it's going to be easier to create a three-dimensional scene based off a video than building it from scratch. Because if you build it from scratch in 3D, my guy's got to build every single little chair, every single table, every single detail, every single texture by hand. It takes months. And if with AI, it might be fully automated. So think about, what I think is going to happen is imagine that you have a real life situation recorded by Axon Bodycam, right? It's recorded from few angles, few officers got into some situation. I think it's going to be absolutely possible to fully recreate that situation in 3D with a click of a button. So you'll basically have that whole room, place, wherever that happened, recreated. And you're going to be able to go inside and relive that situation, have that person where it's standard, fill it with some AI personality that matches what really happened. And I think this is closer than we think. So
I was actually, through our partnership with Citizen, the app that we recently partnered with, it's a consumer app on your phone for tracking crimes. The chairman of their board is a guy named Prem Akaraju. He's the CEO of Stability AI, which is one of the leading AI companies, and in particular in Hollywood. So his previous company, they did all the special effects for Avatar 2. And so James Cameron, the producer of Terminator, Titanic, Avatar,
Legend,
is on his board of directors. And they believe next year we'll see the first fully rendered AI, all AI, no actors movie. And within a few years, you'll have fully rendered, realistic, interactive VR video games, just like Peter's talking about. So we'll have to bring Prem on for a discussion on it.
We know from the research too that like VR training, once you scale it, I mean, there's infrastructure involved, and thinking whether it's police departments or hospitals, reduces training costs by at least half. Like, do you see classroom training going away?
I think it's gone. Like, there's no point. This actually brings us to a different pathway. So Peter approached me with a product that they had built that's not in VR. It uses the same tools, but it allows you to do it on a phone, iPad, or computer screen. And he pitched me on it. And I said, well, you know what? We don't have any budget for this. But tell you what, if you go build it, we'll resell it and we'll come up with a revenue share model, which is the first time we've ever done this. And it's been enormously successful. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so we always wanted to build some training apps that allow you to train your soft skills. How to talk to people, how to de-escalate, how to solve problems verbally before it gets to use of force. And in the past, when we tried to do it, it was just not that exciting. You would have a quiz, a character would say something and you would pick, A, B, C, D, and it was kind of obvious which answer is the de-escalating one. It wasn't really valuable. So now enter AI, where you can basically have all this generated in real time. So you can create a virtual character, you can talk to that character talks back. The character can be filled with all the different data that you want to fill it with. So, I don't know, like a policy of a store, right? And that character is doing something wrong, and you are, let's say, a security guard or an associate, and you got to de-escalate him. But you also got to do it correctly in accordance with your policy and your law. So we thought that we can automatize that. So we can create those virtual characters, but we can also create virtual trainers, virtual coaches. And that's how we came up with this idea for the meta coach. We thought about recreating situations that happen to different businesses, that involve interactions with human, and recreate that situation and also have a virtual trainer that listens to your interaction and gives you feedback in real time. So imagine that you are working at a reception desk in a hospital. There's a guy with a mental crisis coming in, and you are trying to de-escalate him. And you do that, you talk to our virtual character, you see that character on your iPad, and you get feedback at any given moment. The virtual coach tells you, hey, you did a good job, but don't use this, don't mention that. According to our policy, you can't do this. And it all just started working. And then if you look at this, people don't really get to try this stuff. I had this crazy experience. One of our first clients was actually a school here in Arizona, technical school called WestMech. And we did a virtual meta coach for their beauty department. Right? You have beauty department. People are learning how to become, how to open their own beauty salons. They got to learn how to talk to clients. And I was doing a presentation of this technology in front of the board of people who finance this whole institution. There was a public hearing. It's a public institution. And I was doing this demo live. The demo was like this. You are at the reception desk. Lady comes in, our virtual lady, and she says, I was here yesterday. I have a rash on my face. I have allergic reaction. Help me, right? So I was presenting this, and I was like, we're really sorry. We're going to schedule you for, we're going to give you a voucher, blah, blah. The guy from the board says, hey, there's actually a lady that works at that department. How about she tries to do it? I'm terrified, right? It's a live AI situation. So she walks, there's 100 people watching. She takes my iPad. I restart the scenario, right? So the character comes in, hey, I was here yesterday. I got a rash on my face. What now? And the lady, she's a professional. She teaches in that beauty department. She starts talking way longer than I ever did talk to AI. Like, oh, we're so sorry. Your health is super important to us. All this super nice professional stuff. I'm already terrified because I'm like, I don't know how long can you talk to this thing? Is it still recording even? And she ends up with, can we start with you telling us what kind of products we used on your face so we can understand what could happen? We never filled any data about any products into the system. So I'm like, okay, this is over. Right. The AI character says something like this. What are you talking about? It's not my job to know what kind of products you used on me. I have no idea. I just got some procedure. I don't know what that was. And she's like, holy shit, she's right. She's right. There's no way for her of knowing. And she was like, this is good. And, and we just rolled this out. This is the first school in the world, I think, that is using MetaCoach as a tool for training their medical assistants. A medical assistant is another really great example. You're a medical assistant, the patient comes in, you can talk to that patient, but there's many things you cannot say because you're not a doctor, you're a medical assistant. I mean, I'm not sure how the division works here, but there are many things you cannot legally say. And our system will spot that. So when we learned that, I read online that Axon is now selling cameras to enterprise. And I was like,
to companies,
to, those little smaller body cams. And I was like, this is exactly where we want to get. We want to get to companies with large number of employees, frontline situations.
Yeah, we go and say it. We can't say who we showed it to, but we just closed one of the largest companies in the world. And MetaCoach, this was something that Peter, it was 120 days ago?
Yeah.
Peter came to me and I said, all right, let's roll, let's do it. And this was a case where I didn't, I run a 5,000 person company now, right? And we've got processes and budgets and
Yes, we do.
plans, and it would take time. And look, you have to do that at this
Right.
scale. But we found a way to hack the system where I'm like, you go build it. We'll show it to the customer. If we create value together, we'll figure it out. He made the product. We negotiated a revenue share split. And that ultimately was the thing that closed one of the largest potential customers in our history.
Yeah, yeah, and I was super lucky for you to believe, and Mike Shore, who believed in that as well, because I had to convince him as well. And I was crazy for us. We met in Utah, I think, right, and somewhere there in the mountains, and that was huge because we always wanted to build a product, but we never had like sales team that could actually scale it. And with this partnership, I think it could lead to incredible.
We're
things.
scaling it and in fact, later today, so we had Peter experiment with our enterprise group before you touch the crown jewel that's our public safety business. Right. But today, he's actually showing how we're going to do MetaCoach and the next generation, where you actually have a coach on how to use physical products. Like, talk a little bit about what you're showing Andy today.
Yeah, so basically what we wanted to do is wanted to combine an AI large language model with visualization, with basically showing what we're talking about. And the idea was to take a model, 3D model of a taser, and tag every little component of it, trigger, safety, battery, and all that. And then feed our system with all the data we can find about the taser, whether it's onboarding documents, manuals, everything. And in the future, like field knowledge from officers, like what to do when something happens, right? So what we end up with is a tool where you can you take an iPad, you see a 3D model of a taser, and it takes you through the onboarding process, and at any given moment you can ask any question like, hey, what do I do now? This little thing flashes, I can't recharge it, whatever. And it not only tells you, but it also shows you in real time on that model what you have to press. And it also works the other way around. So the taser can ask you like, hey, where's the safety button? Press it on the 3D model, right? So I hope this can help Axon in training. I hope it can help in maintenance, service calls, stuff like that. We'll see. We'll see what's the reaction. I'm really curious about that.
You showed it to me before we started the podcast. It's pretty amazing. Rick, do you see, VR is sort of the future of training for sure, but you got to scale that out. People got to become believers. And I think that's happening. But this MetaCoach is just, all you need is an iPad or iPhone.
Yeah.
Well, or you can play it in VR too, though. Like the same platform, we could render it in VR.
Absolutely. You can render it anywhere. Yeah.
All right. So there's a lot of complexity here. Here's the roadmap. We started, basically building. By the way, one of the most important decisions we made was not to use the first generation VR headsets that require a room setup. Mm-hmm. So many of our competitors, to get to market quickly, said we're going to use the ones, early ones like Peter talked about. You have to have a computer and cameras all over the room. So we waited for what are called the all-in-one headsets. And at first that was pretty risky because we had to get our hardware working with it. We were at a big disadvantage because the other systems were more mature. So the first couple of years, we had all these bugs we had to work through. But now we have, I think, over 200,000 officers using our training because we've got all the hardware dialed in. Now we've got the hardware dialed in. We've got the 360 videos for like these movies you can watch effectively. And it's like a movie. It's not super interactive, but it's really engaging and it's real people. Then we've added our skills and drills, which is like a video game where you're either shooting zombies or you're in a firing range. Then we expanded into, and Peter and his team built the first versions of this, and I think almost all of our scenarios, where we called it hybrid, and it was inspired by the way police simulators work today. If you go to a police training simulator, it's videos, and you're interacting. It's not super interactive, but we call it branched video.
Right.
And so you can interact, and then an operator is like pushing buttons to jump to different video clips to react to what you're doing. So it's less interactive than a video game. And then if you shoot, if you hit the target, the system senses that, and then it cuts to a video of the person falling down. So Peter and his team built that for us in VR, so we get the same sort of interactivity that you do from a traditional police simulator. And our idea was maybe cops would like that because it feels familiar. And I think overall we were surprised.
We're building new one. Bart just flew to Brazil to record some new ones.
Oh. And then finally, there's the fully interactive computer rendered worlds. And that's our VR interactive simulator. And we have multiple scenarios there. And then that over the next year or two will add AI and the characters. Today, an instructor still has to kind of guide the process. But I think in another year, it's all going to be AI. Sure. The character, the situation will guide itself. And then the instructor can focus on being the instructor and not like focusing on pushing buttons on an iPad.
It's going to be cool.
I mean, and before we get out of here, because we do have to get out of here to go see 100+ police leaders that we're all going to go talk to here in a little bit. I'll ask the question, both of you too, like VR, the future of training, but do you see AR, which we talked about earlier, like, is that going to be what we all wear and what we train?
Well, before we even go there, there's one more little secret project that Peter and I are working on.
Is this going to be one of those where like, this is not going to work?
We'll see. It's risky. So, as we say, you can train anywhere with VR, but you got to train somewhere. And I was noticing, even in our offices, when we bring people in, we're trying to find a place like, and then you go to a conference room, you're moving the chairs around, or you got to like go to the lunchroom and move the tables. And so we had this insight, well, what if we just made a shipping container that was prefabricated where people could train? So it's called the Axon Training Pod. And we've been shipping those.
Pretty cool.
It's really cool. And the idea is I want to turn VR training into like an ATM cash machine, right? We used to go to the bank teller to get our money. Now we all got trained to go to the machine and we self-serve.
And you drop it. All you got to do is run power to it, and it's everything you need.
It's everything you need. You go in, the officer, they check their gun away, they pick up their equipment, they go in. The idea is I want to get to where an officer could be doing a scenario every day before they go on shift or at the end of the shift. So they're getting much better high frequency training. But there's one Achilles heel of the current training pod, and that is it's an 8-foot by 8-foot room, so you can't move very much. And so Peter and I were on a trip, and we were brainstorming, and we're not going to get into how it works because we want to save some of the surprise. But if you've seen the movie Ready Player One, there's part of the magic there is that you put the VR in, and then you're in a virtual world where you can run and move around and like have infinite movement. I think we've cracked the code. People have been trying for a decade, and we bought a couple of virtuality treadmills, and they're all pretty janky. And we went in a different direction that is surprisingly simple. We're still tuning in. It's not quite there, but I think in the next year, we will have this technology. I'm currently calling it the orbital rig. Well, anyways, there's a little bit of an orbital movement to...
You're going to give it all away. Like you just said, you're trying to...
But then you'll be able to go into our pod, plug into the orbital rig, and now be in a virtual world that is endless. I even think there will be consumer applications for this where you could go on a video game where it's The Hobbit and you're exploring, all the different kingdoms. And once we add movement, infinite movement into the training pod, I think it's going to be magical.
Yeah, because you're fixing one of the biggest problems of VR, which is lack of space. And I see this everywhere,
And by the way, are you getting a chance to go meet with the orbital rig team on this trip while you're here?
This trip probably I won't be. I'm flying back to Poland today, so probably it's going to be hard. But I just sent them our 3D environment that we built, this futuristic Dune-style Axon theme temple. So I think they're going to add this to the demo today.
So how's the movement? What we're trying to do is that movement that makes you motion sick sometimes from the old. That's what we're really tuning now is the movements that how's it coming along.
It's like sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's not. It's going to take a while to get the right. I mean, I don't want to go into details of how this works, right?
Because Rick will just keep talking about and tell the details of how it works.
It's hard. Like this is the first time we work on we help your team because your team is doing most of the work there, but we're helping you with hardware, and hardware is hard, man. Like,
well, the core of the design, I had an idea with 4 connectors, and you got it down to 1. I mean. Invention's a team sport. We're doing this together.
I didn't know where you were going. I forgot about the orbital rig. And that this is another one of those that there are a lot of people that are skeptical that it's going to work. So that's why I'm probably going to place my bet on it.
I think we've got another 20 minutes. We're going to come in hot to that customer session before we end it. And look, we'll have split this into 2 sessions. This is such a great segment. I want to talk a little bit about the future, even more. Like, what have we not talked about? And then I want to go back and do a little bit more on Peter's entrepreneurial journey. Actually, we've all been through the shit shows and the battle scars. So
I got a bunch.
All right, so we got the orbital rig, we've got coming the augmented reality glasses and all that. What else have we not talked about that is coming in the future?
Well, I think what's really exciting is once the AR part is going to start to work better, we'll be able to do AR training. And I'm really excited about this part because imagine training in your real life location, right? So there's a school, right? Or there's some sort of government building or anything where stuff can happen. So once AR is tracking the reality well enough, you'll be able to put little glasses on yourself, have a taser controller and just walk around a real life empty place. And there's going to be bad guys hidden behind corridors, right? So that's going to be really interesting because that will allow us to move as we would really move, will allow us to have team operations. So you're going to have a team of 8 SWAT officers or whatever. You'll be able to have virtual civilians, virtual everything, and I think this usage of real space is going to be a very interesting element in training that will make it whole.
Actually, one thing that I forgot to mention almost, Peter came today to show me this is a training module for our D-Drone Defender. So we acquired D-Drone, one of the world's leader in counter-drone, both detection and jamming. Now the real jammer, this is missing most of it. The real jammer is, it's
Huge.
bigger than this. Well, it's
Not huge.
You're not going to stick it in your suitcase.
Right.
It's got big antennas and stuff on it. So what Peter and his team did was just brilliant. Is they built a training simulator, and on the inside, if you can see it there, that is just a standard Oculus Quest hand controller.
Yeah.
And they built this frame around it. And now they've got another version because our sales team wanted the big one that looks like the real one. And so they did that with an infrared see-through plastic. But then I wanted to be able to take it on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Do I get to keep this one?
Yeah, that's for you.
Oh, sweet. So basically, I could throw this in my suitcase, put a customer in a
You
headset.
can even separate it in 2 pieces.
And then when you're in VR, VR comes on and this grows into the full-size jammer. And then we show you how to jam drones. And one of our cool things with D-Drone is because we have the sensors that know where the drone is, like many other jammers, you just have to point it at the sky and you don't even know where the drone is. Here, we're tracking the drone. And so I like to say that we use the exact same targeting system Luke Skywalker used to put a photon feed out down the Death Star's.
Let's see how many times Rick gets stopped going through security with that thing.
So check this out, baby. This is going to be in my suitcase, and it's all plastic. So yeah, it's.
Did you fly over with that, or did you?
Oh
ship?
yeah, I did. Yeah, but we can split it in 2 parts. But what I love about it is that it doesn't require any additional electronics. It's just like a case where you put the controller, and the controller does all the tracking. So
it's brilliant in its simplicity. We had a previous version we had done with another team that had developed it. Another vendor did it for D-Drone, and it required the whole room setup. We had one in the embassy, the Axon Embassy in DC.
I played it.
Yeah, and this is. We got to get you to try it. The experience is way better and just way simpler. So, man, exciting.
He just got very excited about that, especially you're going to leave that behind for him.
yeah, it's. I mean, this is the first time we kind of start 3D printing stuff,
Right.
And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I love it. We just bought those machines, and stuff comes out of them. And when you work with software on your life, you get really excited about anything physical that actually leaves the office.
Well, when Peter came in this morning, we started an hour late because I was upstairs with Kool-Aid. We were 3D printing parts for our counter drone cartridge. And so, look, I had never used CAD software before. So like the Apollo Dart that we're launching next year, I brainstormed with our engineers to do that. But I was doing it with toilet paper tubes and a razor blade, cutting up, no, we should have it fold like this. And then finally, when I was going to Kyiv, I was up on a train all night. I couldn't sleep. I was kind of nervous and scared and excited. And so I was like, okay, tonight's the night. And so I was working on designing counter-drone cartridges while going to Kyiv, where drone warfare is at its primary. And I just 2 days ago, I got a 3D printer. So now I'm printing my own parts. We had a test earlier this week, and I failed spectacularly. I mean, I thought the design was going to work brilliantly, and the thing just completely failed. But we learned quickly, and then this morning I was printing out new parts. Mike, you were getting a little frustrated with me.
I was not getting frustrated.
Anyway.
No, he was like a kid on Christmas Day when he got that 3D printer.
Yeah.
We were cutting a podcast that day. We're in the Bat Cave's in the basement there, and Rick's got his 3D printer out there, and he's going to town and having fun. I actually learned too, because I was watching you design it, and then you watch it print out. Like that was pretty amazing. So
yeah. So I had this fucking awesome job. I get up this morning. I'm working on 3D printed parts. Kool-Aid comes over. We put them together. Shit, that didn't work. We're redesigning parts and reprinting. I get to have an awesome podcast with some good friends, and we're inventing and innovating together. From here, we're going to be rushing at the last possible minute because we have like 100 law enforcement leaders at headquarters.
Typical.
And then I've got to get to the firing range because they're going to be firing the stuff we were printing this morning. And so one of my really fun inventors who works out of his garage in the Midwest, he flew in, and so we're going to be using the high-speed cameras. I'll probably get home, hopefully before my kids are in bed tonight. I just have so much exciting stuff going on. But before we leave, okay, there are people that are watching this podcast that are saying, man, they love that we're sharing the inside baseball, what it's really like to be a startup. And I've shared some of the bigger mistakes I've made and some of the crazier life or death moments. Can you take us through a couple of yours? Like what?
Oh man, yeah. So I think the first 8 years was basically every year there was a new crisis, and every year we thought we have this figured out, and then it just went down, where it went south.
There's something like that. For me, it was the first 7 years were a disaster as well. We bankrupted my parents. When we launched body cameras, the first 7 years, it was a flaming disaster until it finally turned around. So it seems like this 7 or 8 year, it's kind of a thing.
Yeah, we were rescued several times by just random investors just coming in. Sometimes we had a situation where we ran out of money, like some client canceled, and suddenly we get a call from a guy who just, I don't know, sells something absurd. And he's like, hey, I saw your company online. Can I invest? I was like, oh, yeah, sure.
Just out of the blue.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
But
that never happened to me. I've never had an investor other than my dad and his buddy until we went public.
And we had situations where, I remember one time we ran out of money again. Because I'm not that great with that, and that was before we had a CFO. That was crazy. Now we have a CFO, smart guy. Things are much better. But before that, we kind of did it on our own. And I remember we had no clients, and I said, and Bart just called like Smithsonian Institute, like, hey guys, do you need VR? And they were like, yeah, actually, we have a project. And we did this whole project about moon landing, 50th anniversary, where NASA was involved. It was presented like all the U.S.
And this is
embassies.
just because you guys picked up the phone and called the Smithsonian.
Just because we called it.
Lesson right there.
But
There's a
we
lesson
also,
right there.
But we had also like some crazy stories. I remember when the pandemic started. That was everything. Like VR went up, but at the same time, everybody was terrified of risking, right? Mm-hmm. Then VR started going up, and we thought that, okay, we're gonna get some financing. We got to get a real investor. I mean, we had some great guys that invested, but they were not like, VC, private equity, just like, guys that believed in what we do, and several American dudes as well. And, we started looking for money, and that was the hype of the metaverse. Metaverse was everywhere. Yep. So we go to the first VC fund, and they say, we take the whole round. Like, wow. we wanted like $3 million. Like, yeah, we take all of it. Like, wow, that was easy. So that was the first meeting. 2021, I think that was the peak of the bubble, of the back then startup bubble. So things were easy, and so we had this big American client. And
so did you get the money?
So here's the thing: I'm not going to mention the name of the company, and I don't think I'm allowed. I didn't check, but let's not risk it. Okay. So there's this big multi-billion company that is our client, right? And we do a lot of VR stuff for them. Kind of like
not Axon,
different company. That was before we met you, and they are happy with what we do. And I tell them, hey, we got this new investor. They're about to sign, and they're great, a great investment firm, awesome people. I really enjoyed talking to them. And our client is like, hey, wait. Actually, we don't want you to get that money. We're gonna give you way more. We're gonna give you twice as much valuation. We're about to do an IPO. We're gonna be great together. And I came back to my investors, and they said, well, the valuation is twice as much as what you got from the other guy. So there's no, just take the money and go with that. So we took the money
from the new company,
from the client, our client. So our strategic client became our investor. And that the deal was that they're going to pay like every month, like the installments. So we basically stopped selling. We hired a bunch of people, grew 100% over a few months.
So you doubled your cost.
Double our cost, reduced our revenues to zero because we were now building this product together that we were supposed to scale together. And I remember, the Ukraine war started in February 2022. And I remember that feeling as 24th of February, 22nd, the war started. And I thought, thank God I have this investor that's paying every month for the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I felt so safe. And that was the last time they paid, that day. And they stopped paying, as a company worth $6 billion, right?
Wow.
And you start calling them like, hey guys, like, what's going on? Like,
I remember when I was a little $6 billion company.
and we're still not panicking. Like, come on, this is like a huge
they're going to pay.
We're thinking they're going to pay for sure. And then, we call them, and like we get emails back, and the titles of the people we work with are keep changing. And there's a new guy, and there's a third CFO.
Oh, not good.
Turns out they got into some real trouble internally. I don't want to go into details, like lawsuits, private equity, billions of dollars, IPO canceled, all that stuff. And we were like, I think, the least of their problems. And I would go on a call with a different guy every week who would just like open the Zoom with like a bunch of papers. He was like, "Who are you again?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm this company you guys are about to kill." "Oh, I'm so sorry. Get in the line." And it took us a while, and we were saved basically by a miracle. Our friend just borrowed us money, and we just survived only because of that.
Was this a guy who was a previous investor?
No. He was a father of a friend, and he just saved us out of the blue. I never even ask for help, and that was a pure miracle. I think the chances of that happening and the chances for this company to survive were like, 0.1% at that point. We had no revenues, no nothing, and remember, we were in Poland and the Ukraine was invaded, and people might not remember that, but that was a very weird time. People were terrified of investing anywhere. And I had still this, in my mind, I was still in 2021. The first VC fund that I spoke gave us all the money. So now I go back to the fund we said no to, and they're like, well, sorry, man, the situation changed. They're not going to get anything from us. And, they were right, I think. At that point, we were basically a zombie almost. And I went to US. I met with all the different funds, all the different people. I spent like a month here, nothing. And like, where are you from? Poland? Like, you guys are next. Like, good luck. And and we survived. And, actually, the funny story, I don't think I ever told you that, but around that time, when I was deciding whether to take the money from that big that VC and that client of ours, I got a text for a guy that I worked previously. He mentioned a company called Axon that they're looking for a VR team to acquire. And I was like, I have too much stuff. Like, we are closing this deal, deciding, and I said, we're sorry, we can't help at this point. And trust me, like when he got back to us like a year later, that was a great relief. And Axon played a huge role in kind of helping us get back on our feet.
It's incredible.
Wow. That's awesome. It makes me feel good to know, it's been a real win-win. I mean, you have been transformative for us, really, as part of the team turning the Taser integration around and zombies and everything we've done together. So so glad that we found you guys when we did.
Yeah, we're always going to be grateful for that. We started with like a little prototype made by 3 people. Now we have like 80 people working on stuff for you, helping your teams. So
and what's the lesson, Rick, for those? I mean, we're a big company now, 5,000, and you're dealing with a startup. I mean, there's complexities involved. We have our own teams. How do you make this relationship work?
Well, we have a bifurcation at the way we run the company. Josh Isner and Brittany and Jeff really run the company.
Our CFO and our CP, our Chief Product Officer.
Yeah. And I view part of my job, as I've talked about before, I think relationships are the glue that holds the universe together. And so, I put him in touch with Mike Shore. I said, hey, look, Mike doesn't have the budget, so this is actually great. This newer stuff. I mean, before they were doing paid contract work for us, but I also know, in talking with Peter, he was sharing with me at our CEO summit that his goal is to get his company scaling where they're doing more selling products, because when you sell products, you can build it once, you can sell it a lot, and it's much more valuable for investors than when you're doing just paid contract work.
Right.
And so this was a win-win where it's like, hey, and he showed me the meta coach. I was like, oh, you guys have something pretty valuable. Tell you what, let's sort of side run all of Axon's internal systems, and we'll just do this as a rev share deal. You worry about, I'm not going to pay you to develop it. You develop it yourself, but then you'll get a chunk of the revenue. And it looks like that's off to a great start.
Did you at least get a new gold challenge coin from Rick?
But I keep my gold coin in my office. It's a very special artifact for me because it symbolizes kind of the turning point.
Yeah.
We were at the lowest and it went uphill from there. Let's hope this trend continues. But I want to add that, apart from this awesome partnership that we're building right now, in the standard kind of like services we provide to you, it's also kind of unusual the way Axon operates, because we operate based on trust. Like the contracts we get from Axon, project descriptions are very vague. It's like, hey, do this, do that. Like this could never work in Europe. Like if you wanted to build something like this in Europe, you would have a contract that's 200 pages long. Here with Axon, we get like 2-page contract. And the deal is like, okay, we're going to figure out how to make it work. And maybe will take more tries, maybe fewer tries. The budget is this, and we never come back and we say, hey, actually we got to increase it by 10% because it's kind of, we risk, Axon risks as well, but it just works. I think this is what I love about America. Something like this would never work in my continent.
But I would tell you, like, part of my role is I would go back and I would check with our team and I say, look, I want to make sure we don't grind on Peter too much, because that's what big companies do. Right? They grind
them
the
down.
smaller company. So it's really pretty funny. I spend more time negotiating against our internal systems, because to me it's important this is really a fair thing.
Yeah.
If what they create is super valuable, I want them to get a good chunk of it. We'll get a good chunk of it. There's some people who make their money in business by like being a great negotiator, and like basically they make money by pulling it out of somebody else's pocket. And I don't know, that's not how I want to live my life. I don't think that's the culture of the company. It's like, hey, we're going to take a risk and we could both make a lot of money together. And so I'm glad it's worked out. And I was only checking in again to make sure you felt good about how the tool was coming together.
And
We feel great about it.
And when Peter's telling you this, his startup funding story, like, what's going through your mind based on your experiences?
Deja vu, man. Except nobody ever called me up and gave me money. Literally, the first outside dollar we ever got was in a public offering, which never happens. But the taser was such a crazy idea. Nobody was going to invest in it. I'm shocked you had as much trouble as you did with VR, because it was such a hot topic. But I could see how the Ukraine war and all that. Yeah,
It was
COVID would just.
It was hot as a gimmick, right? But it was much less hot when it comes to like actual solutions, right? So you could get a gig like, hey, we want something cool for a trade show, but to build like an actual product, like it took a while. This is happening right now.
Well, Peter, I think we finally do have to go. We're going to have customers waiting for us back at headquarters. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much.
A real pleasure working
you,
with you.
Peter.
This was a lot of fun today.
Yep.
Thank you for having me. That was great.
And thanks, Peter, for coming into this episode of Boldly Go. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And you can find all of our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast from. And Rick, any closing words before we hit the road here?
No, let's get out of here.
All right. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Let's boldly go.